"That stuff stinks. It looks like food taken from the trash." The words hit me like a dry punch to the chest. John froze the lunchbox with it still in his hands. It was just rice and beans, shredded beef and vegetables, a recipe his mother used to make when winter was harsh in Detroit. Simple, nutritious, made with love. But there, at that moment, in the gleaming white kitchen of his mother-in-law's house, it seemed as if he had brought filth into a temple. His mother-in-law, Donna, wrinkled, her nose as if the smell of poverty had invaded her luxurious home. The entire table burst into laughter, and Emily, his wife, simply looked away, as if that man with worn-out pants and a wounded soul wasn't the same one to whom she swore eternal love. "You really brought it that for my house. Poor people's food for poor people." Donna murmured near the sink, thinking John wouldn't hear, but he listened. He listened to each word as if they were sharp blades. Her face burned, not from shame, but from a bitter mixture of sadness, helplessness, and something even deeper, the feeling of not belonging. John said nothing. He kept silent like someone guarding against an explosion about to happen. But the next day, when that same woman appeared at her door, eyes wide, lips trembling, face colorless, and hands empty, he knew the world had turned upside down, and he was about to learn the other side of that story. John adjusted the collar of his shirt with his calloused hands, trying to hide the wear and tear on the fabric. He had spent the entire afternoon wondering whether or not he should go. It was the first family dinner since he married Emily, and his mother-in-law's house, an imposing mansion in an upscale Atlanta neighborhood, made him uncomfortable. Every brick seemed to judge his humble roots. With his lunchbox firmly in his hands, he crossed the immaculate garden. He had prepared the meal himself, as he did every day during his lunch break: brown rice, black beans, stewed meat with vegetables. It was simple, yes, but healthy. This was what he could afford, and more importantly, it respected his dietary restrictions, which few in the family seemed to take seriously. The door opened with a sharp click. "Look who decided to show up," said Donna, the mother-in-law, with that smile that never reached her eyes. "Did you bring anything?" John smiled shyly. "Just my food, Mrs. Donna. I have to stick to my diet." "Ah, right. Food poor, nor." The phrase came with a sweet venom. In the dining room, the scene looked like something out of a magazine ad: silver cutlery, napkins folded into flowers, soup plates waiting for some French delicacy. Everyone was impeccably dressed. Emily was wearing a blue dress he had never seen before, and there he was, with his plastic lunchbox in hand. He sat down at the corner of the table. Laughter was already circulating among the guests. When he opened the lunchbox, the smell of hot food wafted out. And that's when it happened. "That stuff stinks. It looks like it came straight from the trash," exclaimed Donna, covering her nose with the napkin. The table erupted in laughter. John remained silent. Emily looked away, embarrassed, fiddling with her phone as if nothing was happening. He tried to smile, to pretend it didn't hurt. But inside, something was beginning to break. With each bite, he felt the weight of their stares. The clinking of cutlery felt like a loud judgment. And then, as if the embarrassment wasn't enough, Donna approached the sink and whispered loud enough for him to hear, "A poor man is only good for bringing shame." John closed his eyes. He took a deep breath. He didn't answer. But in that silence, a storm was beginning to form. John closed his eyes. He took a deep breath. He didn't answer. But in that silence, a storm was beginning to form. And you? Where are you watching this story from? Comment below with your city or country. We love to know how far our stories reach. And if this story has already touched your heart, subscribe to the channel right now. Turn on notifications and join us as we experience every chapter until the end. The food felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds in John's stomach. Each bite was chewed with effort, as if shame had a taste. The laughter of the others still echoed. But now, little by little, silence settled in. A dense, uncomfortable silence. Emily didn't say a word. She kept her eyes fixed on her cell phone as if she were responding to something urgent. But John knew it was an escape, one way to avoid facing her husband sitting there, belittled, while his own mother made him a target. Gradually, the conversations resumed, but lifeless. The weather had changed. Even among the relatives who had laughed instinctively, a strange feeling now lingered, as if, deep down, they knew something was wrong. John wanted to get up. He wanted to leave, but he stayed. Out of respect for Emily, out of a stubborn desire to fit into a world that wouldn't accept him, he always tried. While everyone else savored sophisticated dishes with French names, he chewed on the same food that had sustained him for years, food that he learned to value, food that saved their childhood from hunger, food made with what he had, not with what he wanted to show off. Donna returned to the table minutes later, carrying a glass of red wine. She toasted with some guests, made lowbrow jokes as if nothing had happened. And then, out of nowhere, he blurted out another one. "Emily, darling, you could have chosen someone better, don't you think?" The phrase landed like a bombshell. John looked at his wife, waiting, silently pleading for a word, a gesture, anything. But she just smiled nervously and replied, "Mom, please, not today. Not today." 2 words. Those hurt more than any insult. John finished his meal in silence. He waited until everyone had finished, and when no one was looking, he got up and went out into the garden by himself. The cold night air brushed against his face, but it wasn't the weather that made him shiver. It was pain. The certainty that, in that home of appearances, he was invisible. Or worse, it was seen, but as a mistake. In the quiet garden of the luxurious house, John sat on a wooden bench near the hydrangeas, the same flowers his mother loved so much. And there, in the cold of the night, he closed his eyes and traveled back in time. His mind dragged him to a Detroit forgotten by the newspapers, unpaved. Street, wooden house with a leaky roof, the constant smell of old oil and smoke in the air. He saw his mother, in a torn apron, sweaty, stirring a small pot with what she had managed to gather at the end of the day. A little rice, a can of beans borrowed from the neighbor, a wilted carrot cut into cubes. And yet, she smiled. "The food may be scarce, son, but it's made with love. And that nourishes more than any banquet." John was 9 years old when he heard that phrase. He never forgot it. He remembered the time when there were no refrigerators, when the heat was the enemy of food, when he would share a slice of bread with his younger brother and pretend he had already eaten so he could leave more for him. He remembered school, where his stomach would growl louder than the teacher's call, and those days when he would come home hoping to find at least some hot soup waiting for him. Poor people's food. Try. But food that saved lives, food that sustained hope. John opened his eyes and looked up at the sky. The stars seemed farther away than ever. In that house, everything was brilliant, except what truly mattered. The pain he felt wasn't just from the offense. It was from the contempt for who he was, for what he lived through, for what he carries with him to this day. Why do so many people associate value with what's on their plate and not with what's in their heart? He stood up slowly, taking a deep breath, trying to expel the lump in his throat. When he went back inside, he found Emily in the kitchen alone, holding a glass of wine. "You disappeared," she said in a tone that mixed guilt and weariness. "I needed to breathe," he replied. "It's suffocating in there." She looked away. John realized she didn't know what to say. Maybe she didn't even want to know. You know what hurts the most, Emily, he continued. It wasn't your mother laughing at my food, nor the venomous comments. She stared at him. So what? You pretended not to see. It was because you didn't. Say a word. It was because you didn't defend me. Emily remained silent. I kept quiet out of respect for you, but I can't keep pretending this is normal. Yes, I grew up with little, but I grew up with dignity, with values. And my lunchbox may not smell of truffles or look like it came from a French restaurant, but it has a story. It has truth. She lowered her head. John took another deep breath and picked up his things. I'm going home. John, wait. She tried to say something, but her voice. He failed her. He didn't wait. He left without making a sound. On the dark street, she walked slowly to the bus stop, feeling her heart beat faster with each step. That night, he didn't cry, but inside, something broke, and he knew either Emily changed or that marriage wouldn't survive the weight of the hidden shame. While waiting for the bus, John took his cell phone out of his pocket and opened the last photo with his mother, taken before she passed away. She smiled, holding a lunchbox exactly like his, simple, humble, unforgettable. He smiled back, even alone, even though I'm tired. Because deep down he knew, poor is he who despises the history of others, and that he would never be. The night was long, the bus was late, the journey seemed endless, and the silence inside the vehicle was just another reflection of what John felt inside. When he arrived home, the same modest house that he himself had helped to renovate with his own hands, he took off his shoes at the door, dropped his backpack on the floor and stood there for a few seconds, staring into the void. There, everything was simple. The walls bore marks from the paint he himself had applied. The furniture was used, but each piece carried a story. And in the center of the small room, the wooden dining table, the same one where he and Emily ate together on the nights when they still looked into each other's eyes. He sat there, alone, and let time pass. Emily arrived later. She was carrying her heels in her hand and had the expression of someone who hasn't slept peacefully. He entered slowly, trying not to make a sound, but John was already awake. I thought you were sleeping, she said, too afraid to look at him. And I thought you were going to defend me, he replied firmly, but without anger. It was just exhaustion, too much pain swallowed. She took a deep breath, dropped her shoes in the corner, and sat down on the other side of the table. They stood there for a few seconds in silence, like two strangers trying to remember why they had loved each other. I was ashamed, she said finally. Not of your food, of everything, of the situation, of my mother, of myself. John looked at her. Do you know how much this hurt me, Emily? She nodded, her eyes welling up with tears. I should have said something. I should have gotten up from the table. But I grew up seeing my mother be like that with everyone, with me, with my father, with the maids, and I got used to it. The confession landed like a brick in the middle of the room. John hadn't expected to hear that. So you think that's normal? No, she replied quickly. I got used to it, but I don't think it's right. I just never knew how to react. I never had a voice in there. John leaned back in his chair, lost in thought. I understand more than you can imagine. I grew up being silenced too. But there came a point in my life where I had to choose. Either I would remain silent forever, or I would stand up, even if trembling. She wiped her eyes with the sleeve of her blouse. And me, can I still get up? John looked at her, and for the first time that night, he saw not the wife silent at dinner, but the girl who was still trying to heal old wounds, the woman who fought, even without knowing how. You can, but only if you do it for yourself and for us. Emily took a deep breath and nodded. I'm going to talk to my mother. the right way, for the first time. John remained silent for a few moments. I don't want you to fight with her because of me. It's not about you, John. It's about me. I'm tired of being complicit in what hurts me. There was power in her words, a new, different kind of power. That night, they slept without touching each other. But there was something different in the air, an open wound, yes, but for the first time, with a real chance of healing. And while the city slept, John dreamed of his mother. She was sitting at the table in the old house, smiling, serving rice and beans, as if they were gold, and he said, "Never bow your head to those who have forgotten where they came from, and never lose faith in those who can still remember." The morning light timidly streamed through the kitchen window, cutting through the silence of the house with a soft glow. John was already up. As usual, he got up early, made coffee and packed his lunch. His movements were automatic, but his heart was still heavy. Each movement was accompanied by the memory of the previous night. The dinner, the glances, the phrase that hurt more than any other, "A poor man is only good for bringing shame." Emily was still sleeping. He thought about waking her with a kiss, as he used to do. But he didn't. Not out of anger, but out of respect for the silence that still needed to be processed. And then the beat came. Tock, tock, tock. 3 dry, quick, anxious beats. John looked at the door, confused. He wasn't expecting visitors. It was only 7:30 in the morning. He grabbed a dish towel to dry his hands and went to answer the door. When he opened it, he couldn't believe what he saw. Era Donna, dressed in silk pajamas, her face pale and without makeup, a completely different version of the woman he had seen the night before. She was trembling. Her lips barely moved, and in her eyes, there was no arrogance. There was terror. May I come in?" she asked, her voice low and trembling. John took a few seconds to reply. The impulse was to close the door, but something inside him, perhaps the upbringing he received from his mother, held him back. He stepped aside, allowing them to enter. She entered slowly, like someone carrying the weight of the world on her shoulders. She sat on the sofa without waiting for an invitation, resting her elbows on her knees and hiding her face in her hands. John stood there, watching. She took a deep breath, as if fighting back her own tears. "Did something happen?" he finally asked. Donna lifted her face. She looked dejected, her hair disheveled, her eyes red. I lost everything, John." He frowned. "Like this? My account was blocked. The company is under investigation. The FBI showed up at headquarters this morning. My cards aren't working. My lawyer hung up the phone. The voice trailed off. "I have nowhere to go." John sat down slowly in the armchair opposite her. "I said nothing. I just listened. Everything fell apart, all at once. And She ran a hand over her face. "I have no one." Silence fell once. More. Donna looked at John with tired eyes. "I know what you must be thinking, that I deserve it, that it's karma." John took a deep breath. "I don't wish ill on anyone, Donna." She nodded, almost as if in a silent plea for forgiveness. I don't even know why I came here," he said, looking around as if only now realizing how simple the place was. "Maybe because it was the only place that seemed real to me." John stood up. He went to the kitchen. She opened the refrigerator and took out the lunchbox she had prepared for work. He put it in the microwave and heated it up. Then he returned with the plate in his hands. "Here, eat." Donna looked at the food. It was simple. Rice, beans, shredded meat and vegetables. She hesitated. "It's the same food as yesterday," she whispered. "Yes," he replied. "The one that stinks. The one you despised." She held the plate with trembling hands, and then he took the first bite. The taste seemed to affect her more than any words could. She closed her eyes and cried, not because of the seasoning, but because of the pride swallowed with every spoonful. John said nothing. He just stood there, watching the woman who humiliated him shed all her arrogance in front of a plate of food. In truth, John said nothing. He just stood there, watching the woman who humiliated him shed all her arrogance in front of a plate of food. In truth. And you, have you ever been in a situation where you had to swallow your pride? Have you ever seen someone change completely after losing everything? Share your story in the comments. It could touch other people too. It is clear. Don't forget to like and subscribe, because the next chapter will give you chills. The sound of the fork scraping the plate was the only thing that filled the silence for a few minutes. Donna ate slowly, as if each bite were a confession. There was no more arrogance in her eyes, nor makeup to hide her vulnerability. Just a woman stripped of everything, her wealth, her poise, her certainties. John watched from a distance. Deep down, I didn't enjoy watching that scene. It wasn't about revenge. It was about something bigger, emotional justice, and perhaps reconciliation. When she finished eating, she put her fork down on the plate with a deep sigh. I don't know what to do now. The sentence came out weakly, as if it were struggling to get past the throat. John approached, picked up the plate, and took it back to the kitchen without saying a word. He washed it in silence. For him, it was routine, but for her, it was a lesson. When she returned to the room, Donna was looking at a framed photo on the shelf. It was a picture of John and Emily embracing in front of the house, a genuine smile on both their faces. Emily was happy here, wasn't she? She asked, as if she already knew the answer. It was, John replied, sitting down, and it can be again. But her happiness was never in the things you value, Donna. It wasn't in expensive dinners or appearances. It was in what we built together, with little, but with love. Donna nodded, her gaze distant. Do you know what's worse than losing everything, John? He didn't answer. He waited. It's realizing that maybe I never really had anything, that everything I thought made me strong only pushed me away from people. John took a deep breath. Her words from the previous dinner still echoed. A poor man is only good for bringing shame. He leaned forward slightly, looking into her eyes. You know what's most shameful? To despise those who have the courage to be simple, to humiliate those who struggle every day to stay on their feet, and to pretend to be better just because they have more money in their pocket. Donna lowered her head. Silent tears began to stream down her face. She wasn't sobbing. She was just crying silently, like someone finally seeing their own unfiltered reflection. That's how I was raised, John. I grew up hearing that poverty was synonymous with failure, that you only had value if you showed success. My father repeated this like a prayer. And you believed it, he added. I didn't just believe it, I became it. I was cruel, arrogant, to you, to my daughter, to myself. John stood up. The past can't be erased, but it's possible to write what comes next. She looked up. Do you think Emily will forgive me? John paused before answering. I don't know, but I think she deserves to see her real mother, not the woman from parties, high heels, and venomous comments. Her real mother, the one who feels, who makes mistakes. That's what she's trying to change. Donna remained silent, but this time it was a silence of listening, not of escape. John went to the closet, grabbed a blanket, and handed it to her. You can stay here today, on the sofa, if you want. She picked up the blanket as if she were being given a second chance. He didn't thank her aloud, but his gaze said it all. And that night, the woman who once called him a disgrace, she slept in the house that she said was not worthy of her daughter, covered in the same fabric she would have mocked weeks ago, and nourished by the food she once despised. The morning arrived more gently than expected. For the first time in a long time, John woke before his alarm clock, not out of obligation, but driven by a different instinct, a strange restlessness that hung in the air. He got up carefully, went to the living room, and there she was. Donna, lying on the sofa, was still asleep. Her face was squashed by the makeshift pillow, the blanket pulled up to her chin. It was almost unbelievable. The same woman who had despised him days before was now resting in the house she considered inferior. John went to the kitchen and started making coffee. He put water on to boil, grabbed the bread, and fried 2 eggs. As the aroma spread through the house, he heard the soft creaking of the sofa door. Donna had woken up. She appeared in the kitchen slowly, barefoot, with her hair haphazardly tied up. "Good morning," he said, his voice still hoarse. "Good morning," John replied without turning around. She looked at the set table, 2 mugs, a plate with slices of toast, steaming eggs, brewed coffee. A simple scene, but full of care. "You prepared this for me?" "For us," he corrected calmly. Donna pulled up a chair and sat down in silence. She picked up the mug with both hands, as if she wanted to warm not only her fingers, but also her heart. "It's been so long since anyone served me breakfast," he murmured. John simply nodded. It wasn't the time for speeches. During coffee, the silence remained. But it was different now. It wasn't uncomfortable. It was respectful, almost complicit, until Donna looked at him and said something unexpected. "I thought of my father today." John looked up. He was a tough man, brutal, but he had a side that nobody saw. When we were going through hard times, he would wake up early, make coffee with weak water, and sing to me even without knowing all the lyrics. And I thought that was too much love for such a cruel world. She took a deep breath. "After life got better, I swore I would never go through that again. And without realizing it, I began to despise everything that reminded me of where I came from." John listened to her attentively. "But yesterday, sitting on this sofa, after eating your food, I felt something I hadn't felt in decades. Truth. That taste reminded me of the girl who ate stale bread with butter and thought it was a feast." She wiped her eyes with the napkin. "I'm sorry, John, not only for what I said, but for who I've been all this time." John sighed. "I don't want your regret, Donna. I want your transformation. Because forgiveness without change is just empty words." She agreed, silently. "You gave me shelter when no one else reached out to me," she continued. "And now I understand why my daughter chose you. Because even with nothing, you have everything that matters." John smiled slightly. "I also understand why she loves you. Because even hidden behind all that armor, there's a woman who can still be reborn." She smiled back. And in that moment, something was rebuilt between them, not through forgetfulness, but through the courage to face the ruins. When Emily arrived home later that day, she found her mother washing dishes alongside John, the two of them silent, sharing chores like old friends. "What's going on here?" she asked, surprised. Donna turned. Around, her hands wet and her gaze calm. "The beginning of a story I should have written a long time ago, daughter." Emily was moved, and for the first time in years, she hugged her mother without any pressure, without any demands, just with love. That night the house was different. There was no music, no candles, no guests. But there was something that had been missing before: peace. Donna had decided to spend a few more days with John and Emily. The plan was temporary, until she resolved her legal and financial problems, but for everyone there, time seemed suspended, and each conversation, each glance, carried the weight of years of silence. John was sitting on the porch when Donna appeared with 2 cups of tea. She handed him one and sat down beside him. The sky was clear, and the air carried that smell of damp earth that John always loved. "Thank you for letting me stay here," she said. "You didn't need to thank me. You just needed to be willing to see." She nodded. "This house reminds me of my childhood," he confessed. "Simple, small, but full of details that only those who have lived with little can appreciate." John turned to her, curious. "You never talked about your childhood." Emily never knew much about it either. Donna looked up at the sky as if searching for courage among the stars. "Because I've spent my life trying to erase her from my memory." He paused. "I was born in a small town in rural Kentucky. My father was a mechanic. My mother sold cakes at the market. We had very little, but my mother did everything she could to make it a home. She sewed her own dish towels, painted cookie tins to make them look new, and every Friday she made rice pudding for us to eat while watching black and white television." She smiled slightly, but the smile soon gave way to a more bitter expression. "But the city was cruel. I grew up hearing that those with money were the ones in charge, that the poor were always the last to be heard. And I swore to myself at 14 that I would leave and never return." John listened attentively. Each word from Donna seemed to peel away another layer of that rigid and controlling woman. "When I got a good job and married Emily's father, I started building this new version of myself. Thinner, more sophisticated, but more distant too. And when he died, I clung to the image of the successful woman. Because inside, I was in pieces." She lowered her head. "And the more I clung to that, the further I drifted away from who I was, from who my daughter needed, and from who deserved my respect. Like you." John took a few seconds to reply. "Sometimes we dress in what the world demands, and forget about the clothes that truly protect us, the ones made from what we've lived through." Donna wiped away a tear with the sleeve of Emily's sweatshirt that she was wearing. "You know, when I saw you with that lunchbox at dinner, I felt something I didn't want to admit. Envy." "Envy?" John raised his eyebrows. "Yes, envy of your authenticity, of your courage not to hide who you are. I spent my whole life hiding my story, and there you were, sitting in front of me whole, even being the butt of jokes, even being judged. You didn't break." John looked ahead, lost in thought. "Yes, I broke, Donna, but I knew how to put myself back together, and each crack taught me more than any luxury." Silence fell between them, but it was a light silence, comforting. Donna placed her teacup on the table beside her and said, almost in a whisper, "Is there still time to rebuild everything I destroyed?" John responded with the calm of someone who has started over from scratch many times. "As long as we can breathe, we can." And there, on that simple porch of a house she once despised, Donna felt something she hadn't experienced in a long time. Hope. Emily arrived home early from work that Friday. The weather was strange, cloudy, muggy, as if something in the air was announcing a storm, and in a way that was exactly what was about to happen. As she entered the house, she heard laughter coming from the kitchen. Curious, she followed the sound and stopped at the door, surprised. John and Donna were wearing aprons, chopping vegetables together side by side. They talked quietly, laughing about something she couldn't understand. The pot on the stove gave off a delicious smell of cooked meat. Emily froze. For years, she had been the bridge between the two, and for a long time, She felt crushed between her mother's coldness and her husband's silence. Now, seeing them in harmony made her feel out of place, as if they had moved on without her. "I've arrived," he said, almost as a reminder that he was still there. John smiled and wiped his hands on the cloth. "Great. We're preparing dinner. Your mother suggested making that stew you liked when you were a child." Donna turned around, still holding the knife, and with a different look on her face. Softer, less defensive. "Do you remember? With carrots, potatoes, and a touch of paprika. I know it doesn't sound like much, but I remember," Emily interrupted curtly. "I just didn't expect to see you two like this." The atmosphere changed instantly. John noticed. Donna did too. "Daughter, I know this might seem strange to you, but—" "Strange," Emily interrupted. "It's surreal, Mom. You've spent your life treating him like an intruder, a mistake. And now he's here, chopping vegetables like they're best friends." John stepped forward. "Emily, your mother is trying to change. And that erases everything she did," she retorted, her voice faltering. "The humiliations, the contempt, the way she made me choose between you two for years." Donna lowered her head. "I messed up, big time. And I know I hurt you. But I'm trying, for the first time, for real." "Try now that you've lost everything." Emily's voice trembled. "Now that you have no status, no bank account, and no one to applaud you?" John gently touched Emily's arm. "I understand your pain, but holding a grudge won't heal anything." She stared at him, her eyes welling with tears. "You forgave so easily." John took a deep breath. It wasn't easy, but it was necessary. Forgiveness isn't for her, it's for me, for us, for you. Emily turned her gaze to her mother, who remained silent, visibly shaken. "I spent my childhood trying to be good enough for you, Mom. Studying, dressing the way you wanted, going to places I hated, just to see if one day I would be accepted." Donna began to cry, silently. "And when I married John, it was as if you had declared war, as if my love for him was a personal betrayal." "I was afraid," Donna murmured. "Afraid of losing you, of seeing you live a difficult life like mine was. But I made a mistake. I turned that fear into control." Emily wiped her eyes. Her heart told her that the woman before her was not the same as before. But her memory, that insisted on recalling every wound. "This isn't going to be resolved over dinner," she said, her voice firm. "But maybe we can start talking. No masks, no games." Donna nodded. "That's all I want." John gave a small smile. He took both of their hands and placed them on the table. "The food will be ready in 15 minutes. And today, nobody eats in silence. And you? Have you ever felt like you were in the middle of an emotional hurricane between people you love? Share your experience in the comments. It could help someone else better understand their own story. And if this chapter touched you, like the video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with anyone who needs to hear this today. The table was set, simple but carefully done. The tablecloth was white, with small flowers embroidered on the edges, a gift from John's mother, kept for years. The dishes didn't match, but each carried a story. The candles in the center of the table weren't for decoration, but to maintain a soft, intimate light. There was no luxury, but there was something rarer, genuine presence. John served the stew with the stainless steel ladle he inherited from his mother. Each portion was placed with care, as if silently saying, "This is for you. This is love." Donna observed everything in silence. Her eyes took in the surroundings, but her mind seemed to wander through distant memories. Dinners where the silence was cutting, tables laden with food, and hearts empty. Emily sat down slowly. Her eyes were still red, but she held a firmness that John respected. She wasn't there to pretend everything was resolved. She was there to try, and that was already a start. "I didn't remember that smelling so good," Emily said, breaking the ice. John smiled. Her mother said it was her favorite dish. Emily stared at Donna for a few seconds. It was. In fact, it still is. But only when it comes with good memories. Donna nodded without defending herself. "I'm trying to create new ones, if you let me." Dinner has begun. The first spoonful made Emily close her eyes, as if traveling back in time. It was the same flavor, the same seasoning from her childhood, but that night it was served with a different energy. There was no tension in the air. There was sincerity. "You know," John began, looking at the plate, "my mother used to say that food made in a hurry feeds the stomach, but food made calmly feeds the soul." Donna smiled slightly. "Mine said something similar, that the real seasoning is what you feel, not what you put in it." Emily looked at the two people in front of her. For so long, she had wanted this moment to happen, for her mother to acknowledge her faults, for John to be welcomed, for home not to be a battlefield. And there, at a simple table, all of that was finally taking shape. "You know this doesn't erase everything, right?" she said. "But it's a good start. And nobody here wants to erase anything," John replied. "We want to build upon the truth." For the first time, Donna touched her daughter's hand across the table. "I took too long to listen to you, Emily. I was so busy trying to control everything that I stopped listening. But if you still want to, I want to listen now, and every day from now on." Emily took a deep breath, overcome with emotion. There was a time when that gesture would have seemed impossible, when a mother's touch seemed as distant as another planet. But now it was real. "I want to, but on one condition." "Anyone," Donna said without hesitation, "stop trying to be perfect and start being human. That's all." Donna smiled, a genuine smile, the likes of which Emily hadn't seen in a long time. "I can promise that. And if you'll allow me, I want to learn everything again. How to cook, how to apologize, how to be a mother, and maybe even how to be a friend." John raised his glass of juice, no expensive wines that night, and said, "So let's make a toast, not to the past, but to the future, made of new choices. And from old recipes," Emily added, smiling. The glasses clinked, and for the first time that modest house was the setting for a rare feast, reconciliation. The following morning began with the unexpected sound of tires screeching and hurried footsteps in the garden. John, who was having coffee on the porch, stood up when he heard the doorbell. Emily, still in her pajamas, appeared behind him with a worried expression. Donna, who was washing clothes in the yard, dropped the bucket when she heard the noise. Tock, tock, tock. 3 firm, determined knocks. John opened the door. "Ms. Donna Harrison?" asked a man in a dark suit, standing next to 2 agents wearing FBI vests. Donna froze. It's me. What's happening?" The lead agent showed a document. "We have a federal warrant. You are being investigated for accounting fraud, tax evasion, and embezzlement. We need you to accompany us to the police station for questioning." Emily stepped forward. "This must be a mistake." "No, it isn't," Donna interrupted, her voice breaking. "I knew this moment would come." John looked at her, surprised. "Did you know?" "Part of what's happening at the company, I suspected it, but I turned a blind eye. I trusted too much in those who manage my business. I signed things without reading them. I thought that because I was above others, I would never be overtaken." The agent took a deep breath. "We can do this discreetly, ma'am. But we need to go now." Donna nodded, already trembling. "Give me a minute. Just one." She went inside, took off her soap-stained apron, washed her face, and picked up her small bag with Her documents. Emily tried to hold her mother's hand. "I'll go with you." "No," Donna replied, her tone calm and firm. "I need to face this alone. I've hidden behind other people for too long." Before leaving, he turned to John. "If everything goes wrong, thank you for treating me like a human being, for giving me what I needed most and never knew how to ask for: humility." John nodded seriously. "It'll work out. But now, it's time to face who you were. Only then can you become someone new." Police officers escorted her to the car. The street fell silent. Neighbors peered out of their windows, curious. But inside, in John's house, what could be seen was something else. Pain, yes, but also dignity. Hours later, Emily and John sat on the sofa, trying to process everything. The television, muted, showed flashes of the operation. Images of Donna entering the police station circulated on local channels. "I never imagined seeing my mother like this," Emily said, her eyes welling up with tears. Vulnerable, alone. John put his arm around her shoulders. "Sometimes it's on the ground that we find what truly matters." Her pride needed to crumble so that love could truly blossom. Emily snuggled against him. "What if she gets arrested?" John didn't answer immediately. He kept looking at the screen. Then he said, "If she goes, she'll come out different, because now she knows who she is and who she can be." The following day, Donna was called in for official testimony. The company's lawyers tried to shield her, but the evidence showed that even without planning it, she was an accomplice by omission. A hearing was scheduled, and there, in front of the judge, Donna had the chance to defend herself. In the courtroom, John sat in the last row, silent, observing. When the defense asked for character testimonies, everyone expected no one to stand up. But John stood up. He walked to the front. He looked the judge in the eye and said, "I was humiliated by this woman, ridiculed, ignored, but she also took me in when she had nothing left. And even in the face of her mistake, I saw genuine remorse. I saw change. And I believe she deserves a chance to make amends, outside of prison." The room fell silent. The judge, visibly moved, reduced the sentence to probation and community service. Donna cried. Emily ran to hug her. John remained standing, firm, like a pillar in the midst of the chaos. In the deepest fall, he was the most humble man in history, who offered a hand to lift up those who previously despised him. The courthouse corridor seemed longer than Donna remembered. Even with her freedom granted, she felt the weight of each step as if carrying a suitcase full of unresolved issues from the past. The conviction was symbolic, but the trial that truly mattered was the internal one. John waited for her outside, sitting on a wooden bench in the morning sun. He held a cup of coffee in his hand, his eyes fixed on the ground. When she appeared, he stood up. Slowly. He didn't smile. He didn't run. But he held out his cup. "It's hot," he said. "Better than cold, right?" Donna picked up the glass and nodded with a half smile. "Always better hot." "Like forgiveness," John finished, looking at her firmly, but without harshness. She remained silent for a moment, observing the man before her. How could he maintain such composure? How could he look at her with such humanity after everything? "You should hate me," she said finally. "It's not my job to hate anyone," he replied. "My job is to live in peace." She took a deep breath, trying to hold back her tears. "What you did in there, that testimony, you saved me, John. I don't even know how to thank you." "It starts with living differently," he said simply. "It's easy to be grateful. What's difficult is being a different person tomorrow." Donna sat down beside him on the bench. They stayed there for a few minutes, watching the activity in the courtroom. People coming in, going out, rushing against the clock. and the two of them standing still as if they had learned not to rush anything anymore. "You made me see who I really was," she said. "Not the woman of jewels, nor of dinners, but that girl from the countryside whom I hid out of shame." John looked at her. "This girl shouldn't have been buried. She's the most precious part of you." Donna smiled sadly. "The craziest thing is, deep down I just wanted to be loved. But I dressed myself in arrogance because I thought nobody loved. Imperfect people." John reflected for a few seconds before answering. "Loving perfect people is easy. What changes the world is loving people who make mistakes and decide to change. That's the kind of love that builds bridges." That night, Donna returned to John's house with Emily. The silence during the car ride was broken only by short phrases, but full of emotion. When they arrived, Donna did something no one expected. She went straight to the kitchen. She put on her apron, grabbed an old recipe, and started cooking. "What are you doing, Mom?" Emily asked, surprised. "Dinner," she replied. "Real food, just like the kind my father used to make when the world was falling apart." John approached. "Do you need help?" She smiled. "Yes, please. You chop the vegetables. I'll take care of the rice." And there they were again, side by side, but now as equals. No hierarchy, no masks, just people trying to heal together. At dinner time, the table was set with candles and simple plates. Donna served each guest with a care that went beyond mere gesture. It was almost a ritual of forgiveness. "It may look like just rice, meat and vegetables," she said, her voice trembling. "But to me, this is an apology, served hot, just the way it needs to be." Emily held her mother's hand. "I accept, and I love you, even with all your cracks." John raised his glass of juice and toasted, "To what we become, after falling and getting back up." The glasses clinked again, this time with a sound that echoed inside my chest. That night, no one talked about money, lawsuits, or old grudges. That night, 3 people sat at the table as survivors, and they proved, between spoonfuls, that true love is simple, imperfect, but incredibly strong. Time passed. Not much, just a few months, but it was enough for everything to change. Not by miracle, but by daily choice. Donna's life was never the same again. The mansion was sold. The bills were paid in installments. Her surname, once synonymous with power, now circulated in courtrooms and local newspapers. But for the first time, this didn't destroy her. She had discovered something that no amount of money can buy: purpose. John and Emily renovated part of the house to accommodate Donna with more privacy. Nothing luxurious, just the essentials, and most importantly, respect. That night, the table was set once more, but now with something different. In the center of the table, instead of expensive candles or artificial arrangements, was a simple vase with flowers from the backyard. Emily had picked them that morning. Next to it, a small pot of rice pudding, a recipe Donna had retrieved from her father's souvenirs. It was the first time she had made it since childhood. John was cutting the fresh bread he had bought at the corner bakery, while Donna was putting the finishing touches on the main course: roast beef with potatoes, garlic, and caramelized onions. Everything smelled of a Sunday family gathering. But there was one more. Surprise that night. Emily smiled, her hands on her belly. "He kicked again," he said, laughing. Donna approached, visibly emotional, and gently touched her daughter's belly. "He's going to be a strong boy, and with his father's heart." John stepped closer, placed his hand on hers and added, "and with her mother's courage." They sat down, together. For the first time, not as a trio forced by obligation, but as a family rebuilt by affection. "Can I say something?" Donna asked, looking at the two of them. "Of course," Emily replied. "Thanks." Emily smiled. "For dinner?" "For everything. For not giving up on me. for teaching me that humility is not weakness and that love begins where pride ends. John raised his glass of juice, a toast to the new table. On to a new life, Emily concluded. And to the new Donna, she said herself, with tears in her eyes. The glasses clinked, gently, like the breeze that came in through the kitchen window. The light was warm, welcoming, and for the first time, there was no painful past, no frightening future. There was only the present. The meal began in silence, but a pleasant silence. The silence of someone who knows they no longer need to prove anything. Of someone who understands that life is made of small choices and that the great turning points are born from simple dishes, honest gestures, and hearts willing to change. And when dinner was over, Donna got up to collect the plates. But this time, not out of obligation, out of gratitude. Gratitude for being there, for having fallen, and for having been lifted up by the person she valued the least. While washing the dishes with John beside her, she murmured, "This house smells like reality, and now it also has my heart." John smiled, wiping the silverware. "Welcome home. And you? Have you ever experienced a reconciliation that changed everything? Share your story in the comments. It could inspire others to start over too. If this journey touched your heart, like the video, subscribe to the channel and share it with someone who needs to hear this today. Thank you so much for following this story to the end. If you felt something genuine in each chapter, know this. This story is also about you, about new beginnings, about forgiveness, about true love. Until the next story, and never forget, it's at the simplest table that the greatest miracles happen.